Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about disability, isolation, and the stupidest 3 months of my life. Before I get started, I just want to say sorry about the sound here. I'm using my webcam microphone and not my professional microphone because I've been having some issues with my sound card and that mic and everything, and I bought a new computer, but I haven't actually transitioned to that machine yet, so just forgive me. So, we've all seen the pictures of the angry Americans and Germans and Brits and angry people in general who are frustrated about having to stay home, having to self-isolate, having to be in lockdown, and so on. The ones in America had guns, they were protesting in front of government buildings. It was a pretty scary looking sight, to be honest. Their main complaints were that they felt that their freedoms were being infringed upon by being forced to stay home in order to stop the spread of a virus. They wanted haircuts. They wanted to go to Applebee's. They wanted to go to the mall. They wanted to go to the beach. They wanted to do all of the normal things that they were used to doing before everything changed back in March. And I'm sympathetic. Really, I am. See, one thing people don't usually understand is the isolation that disabled people have to go through. For me, it was pretty traumatizing. I was born in New York City, but around the time I turned 5, my parents decided to move to the countryside. And then when my mom and dad got divorced, my mom moved to an even more rural part of Pennsylvania than where we had initially moved to. Going anywhere required a car. There was no such thing as public transportation, and there still is no such thing as public transportation. The entire county in which my mom lives only has about 40,000 people. And since everything in America is designed for profit and not for convenience or actually helping people, there never likely will be any form of real public transportation up that way. So, because of this, if you are disabled or too poor to buy a car or any number of things, you're stuck at home. In my case, I lived with my mom, who had a driver's license but who worked very long days. So on a weekday, the best I could expect was that maybe we would go to the grocery store. On the weekends, we could expect to maybe go to the mall or go shopping or take part in any normal amount of capitalistic activities, but that was about it. Maybe if I were lucky, she'd drive me to a concert, but I'd have to usually find my own way home. When I'd be with my dad, the situation would be even worse. Even though where he lived wasn't nearly as rural as where my mom lived, my dad didn't have a driver's license because he's blind too. My brother and my dad also have some kind of weird paranoia thing. So they didn't trust people, and because they didn't trust people, I wasn't allowed to be around people. So I spent most of my teenage years online, with online friends, in chat rooms, for better or for worse. I got used to seeing pictures of other people going out, having fun, going to sleepovers, having birthday parties, going shopping, going to the movies, going on vacation, all of these normal things that I never really got to participate in, maybe once or twice a year if I were lucky. When I moved on my own, part of why I did that was because I wanted to experience freedom. Part of why I've promised myself that I will never move back to the countryside, even though I now live in a country with public transportation, is that I don't want to isolate myself again. Or at least I didn't. I live in the center of my city because I want to be close to things. I want to be able to go to restaurants. I want to be able to go get my own groceries. I want to be able to do things independently, leave the house if I want to. Because for a long time, when I first got this freedom, I was afraid of it. I didn't know how to use it. Part of being isolated my whole life meant my social skills were never super. I had to work to get better at those. I had to work to learn to be around people and understand situations. It wasn't easy. Add in my PTSD and my gender dysphoria and everything just went kind of crazy. I really had a hard time the first couple of months I was here because I just didn't know how to be around people. I'm still not great at it. I can perform on stage, sure, but in terms of actual conversations, it's difficult. I don't always know what to say, and usually, quite often, I say the wrong thing. Maybe in a future video or a book I can go deeper into my really messed up childhood and adolescence that I didn't realize was messed up until I actually got away from it. But for now, I'll get back to the point at hand. Because I'm so used to isolation and being alone, when I found out about the situation, it was quite easy for me to revert back into what I knew. Not leaving the house, sleeping until 4 p.m., and just killing time. Except this time I had a job and a child and responsibilities, so I couldn't do that. And at the same time, being reminded of my very lonely teenage and young years was triggering. I know the internet has a hard time understanding that word and the connotations that come with that word, but I'm hoping you can be sympathetic to me here. Imagine spending the majority of your life alone in your room or alone in a basement, and every so often you'd get to get out of there. School didn't really count because no one was particularly nice to me there, even though I guess sometimes it was my fault for not having the social skills, but oftentimes it wasn't. And then maybe sometimes gigs or concerts or social occasions, but even there not really being able to flourish because you didn't know how to be around people. Imagine being reminded of all of that and suddenly being forced back into a similar situation, only this time you have a mouth to feed and you have bills to pay and you can't sleep until 4 p.m. or hide from it. You have to look it in the face and deal with it. I spent a lot of March crying. I worked really hard the past couple of years to improve myself, get better, learn how to be around people, learn how to follow my dreams, not be afraid, to unlearn all of the bad things I was taught about other human beings by my psychotic brother and father. And suddenly it was all taken away from me. So when I turn on the TV or the news and I see these angry, abled people with their guns, with signs about how they want to get haircuts, on some level I get it. I've lived that frustration. I've lived that hopelessness and that feeling of despair. But at the same time, even though this has all been extremely painful for me, I stayed home because it was the right thing to do. Because I didn't want to be the reason why someone else got sick, or get sick myself. Because sometimes things are bigger than our own personal traumas and our personal packages. And sometimes we have to do things because it's good for everyone, not just us. There have been a couple articles written over the past couple of months about how quarantines and lockdowns have disproportionately affected disabled people, especially those who don't have friends or support systems or parents or people who can bring them medication or food. And I just worry it's not being brought up enough. And I worry that even though now there are some people out there who might finally understand just how lonely the disabled experience is, once this is all over and back to normal and we have a vaccine or something, they're just going to forget. There were several times over the past couple of years that I had asked conferences if it would be possible to do my presentations from home because flying somewhere was not feasible. Sometimes it was easy, albeit with a little bit of work from the amazing technical teams of the conferences. Looking at you, Women in Games Conference in Develop Brighton, you guys are great. But other times it wasn't so easy, and people often made me feel really bad about it. I wrote on Facebook a couple of months ago when this all started that I hope this would give perspective to some people from Helsinki about how hard it is for people from the rest of Finland to get to Helsinki every week or every other week for networking events and other things, and then how easy it was for us to feel like we weren't part of the community or part of the scene just because of where we lived. And right now it seems like people are finally starting to realize how unnecessary a lot of traveling we've been doing in our community and industry has been. But I'm scared that everyone's going to forget about that once this is over. And even though people are doing more and more things online, it still feels like some people are being forgotten. And it feels like sometimes the plight and the pain and the isolation of disabled people is being brought up in the aforementioned articles and by certain people who always have championed our cause, but it still feels like the average person just doesn't understand that this temporary, for them, problem of not being able to get a haircut or not being able to go have chicken dipper wing bites and $5 cocktails is gonna be over soon, but for us is gonna be permanent. In my case, Finland went into quote-unquote lockdown in the second week of March. I spent the following 2 weeks in and out of crying fits. Some days I'd feel okay, some days I would just start crying. And from there, it became numbness. I adjusted. I adapted to what I knew. As of tomorrow, Finland is going to be almost totally open. You can have gigs, restaurants can be open at 75% capacity at almost normal hours. Everything is fine, apparently. But my brain and my being have reverted back into this awful state where it's hard to leave the house even though it's beautiful outside. And I don't know how to fix it. And I'm worried that we now have an entire group of disabled people who are experiencing similar things. Especially those of us who have managed to escape our situations only to find ourselves forced back into them. I wrote on Facebook about a year ago that if I could go back and tell 12-year-old me one thing, it would be that it will get better, and one day you will have some semblance of a normal life, with friends, and people who support you, and people who love you, and people who don't question your sexuality, or your identity, or who you think you are, or who you feel you are, or who you know you are, and that you'll be made to feel valid and wanted and loved and understood. But most of all, you'll be free. Of course, part of that is still true. It's not like my friends went anywhere, even though I have lost a few people directly and indirectly because of this current situation, and it's been really hard. But the freedom is gone. The thing that I worked so hard to give myself is gone. People would see me back in the winter and fall, back when I would be traveling everywhere all the time to go see artists, for my own gigs, for conferences, for work meetings, for vacation, for anything. And they'd say, "You're always somewhere. It's so nice to watch your Facebook feed and watch your Instagram feed because you're always somewhere." And I would smile and blush and say thank you and appreciate that they noticed. But I don't think anyone ever understood why I did that. Of course I was doing it because I love traveling, but it's because I spent the first 20 years of my life almost starved of interaction beyond people I was related to or school. And on the off chances I would make friends, usually someone in my family would try to sabotage it because of their own paranoia. So I would end up isolated again. And now that I'm here, far away, protected by friends that I worked very hard to keep, of course my natural reaction will be to travel and talk to and interact with as many people as possible, surround myself with humans and love and fun and good times and good memories and togetherness and all of those things that I felt I was starved of for so long. Now that Finland is opening tomorrow, I felt it was appropriate to process the numbness. I don't know what the next couple of months are going to be like. I don't know how many cases are going to come back. We're probably going to have a second wave of all of this, and it's going to start all over again. And to be honest, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle it a second time around. I'm worried this is going to force me into some kind of weird psychotic state that I won't be able to get out of, where I'm constantly paranoid and reliving some of the worst years of my life. Except this time, I have to go to work at the same time, and I have to take care of my child at the same time. And I have to do the other responsibilities I have in my life, like my radio show and my association work and all of the other things that I'm part of, while similarly battling these demons that I'm not really sure how I can conquer. And if it's happening to me, then it's probably happening to other people too. And I don't know if they're being heard, or if they have the courage to come out and talk about it, or anything. But this is something we have to understand, because for many of you, this is just temporary. It's annoying, and it's frustrating, but it's just temporary. But for a lot of us, it's a stark reminder of how everything we work for can be taken away in an instant by forces beyond our control. And I say this as someone who thinks all lockdowns in this situation were completely justified. Please don't interpret any of what I'm saying as me being anti-lockdown or anti-stay-at-home, because that could not be farther from the truth. I actually think we're reopening too soon, but I'm not a scientist. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support me, watch my videos without ad blocker on, because I could really use the money right now. Don't forget to comment and subscribe and support other disabled people on YouTube, because we're probably not doing well and we could really use the support. Thank you.